Our state has some incredible problems. My name is Lynn Hinderrocker. I'm here to talk about that with you and talk about the trends that have shaped this state and dragged us in one direction or another. We're not really we're not realizing the dream we had way back in the early 2000s or even around 2008 or 9 or 10. My name is Lynn Hinderrocker. Welcome to WowBiz, Nebraska. We're going to get it on right now. What does your community here in the state of Nebraska really stand for? How do you differentiate yourself, stand apart, and attract the talent, the intellectual capital necessary to move your community to the next level? How do you attract people that are going to be the leaders of your community in 15 or 20 years? You need to brand your community in a meaningful way. My name is Lynn Hinderrocker. This is WowBiz Nebraska. Thanks for watching. We're going to talk about branding your community right here in Nebraska. I'm going to give you two solid examples here before we reach the halfway point in this particular edition of WowBiz Nebraska. And then we're going to come back on the back end, and it's going to be a raucous, heavy-duty discussion about strategy and your responsibility as a leader, a business leader, a community, a civic activist in your community, what you really need to be responsible for doing and how to do it, how to think differently so you can go forward the back end of the pandemic, the back end of the COVID period, 4 or 5 months, and launch yourself, your company, your business community with great power and intensity and acceleration come April, May, June of 2021. You want to be rocking, and I'm going to tell you how to get that done. But first, again, we're going to talk about community branding, placemaking, and we're going to go way beyond logos and themes and hook lines, although those are going to be very important. But we're going to talk about what is the experience, how does it feel to be in your community, and what kind of things do people do with their discretionary time, how are relationships formed in your community, how is value created, what kind of collaboration goes on, what division exists that kind of prevents you from moving forward with increasing momentum and intensity and innovation, most importantly, by the way, because this entire state is struggling with innovation. Young people, I'm going to start out with a statistic. You gotta know this, and then I'll go to the back end of the show. When young people, we'll say in their 20s, as they kind of gotten out of college and are thinking about their career and so on, you ask those people, what is the primary consideration insofar as, where you're going to live, what your job's going to be, what kind of company you want to work for? I mean, what's in your mind at this point in your career? These are 20-somethings. We're asking that question. 91% of them say, I want a company or an employer that's innovative. 91%. That is a fact. They want to be in an environment and a culture where newness is emphasized. Organizations are not afraid to try something, maybe have multiple projects going on, prototypes, what we call minimum viable prototypes to see what people kind of warm up to. Those kinds of activities and projects, that's what young people want. And yet, if we talk to managers now in businesses in Nebraska, and we ask them about innovation, 80% of them will kind of nod and say, yeah, that's a good idea, innovation's a good thing. But then, and here's the number, right? 33% of them will say, we'll probably get around to innovating maybe in the next 5 years. In the next 5 years. 91% of all young graduates are looking for an innovative business and employer culture. Only 33% of the businesses out there say, we're ready to innovate, but it may take us a few years. Everybody else doesn't even talk about it. It's not even a factor, not even a consideration in their culture or achieving their strategic objectives. So that gap between 91 and 33, you can turn off the TV right now. If you want to know what the problem with Nebraska is, why we're losing 3,000 bright people every year, that statistic's a good place to start. Yeah, it's not the only one, but it's a great place to start. It tells you how the mindset between the new generation, kind of the new emerging leaders, shall we say, and the people that are running our communities and our companies right now, how divergent they really are. And by the way, I must say then, obviously, the real problem isn't competition. It's not the pandemic. It's not the economy. It's inertia. It's inertia. Just the whole concept of going forward. It's unknown. It's unpredictable. We better look to the past, see what we did in the past. Our memory goes into overdrive, and we start thinking about the good old days, hoping that the future will be like the good old days. And of course, there's only one thing we know: it won't, right? It won't. It won't be like that. It won't be like that. So we are stuck. Enormous anxiety about the future and how to be responsible for solving problems that are macro, not just our community and so on. Now, one of those solutions is rebranding or branding our community. It's a very interesting topic because there are very few people in most communities, not all, but many communities across Nebraska, there are not a lot of, how we should say, creative marketing types, all right? And this certainly is in that groove, right? Most people are operational. If they're business oriented, they run a company. You know, they don't think about this kind of stuff. And civic administrators are, let's face it, administrators. They keep things moving and stay on top of the books and the money and so on. Nobody's sitting around saying, you know, how can we really be different? Now, they come up with some cliched concepts. You know, they talk about, well, we're really good at this, or we really have good housing, or Main Street's really nice, or whatever, but those are all unoriginal, unimaginative, and ineffective insofar as deeply differentiating your community. I'm going to talk about two communities specifically right now before we get to the half and tell you how I would brand those communities to attract positive attention, media attention, of course, attract the kind of young talent that we're hoping will live and work in these two communities. The first one is Columbus, and the second one I'm going to tell you about as I get through, as I get the back end of Columbus. But Columbus is particularly interesting. By the way, it's Scribner, excuse me. So Columbus and Scribner. Of course, Scribner is a rather small community, and Columbus would be middle size here in the scope of Nebraska. And by the way, they're both in northeast Nebraska, and of course, Columbus and Norfolk are kind of in the same category geographically and in a lot of ways. So that's a very interesting thing because Norfolk is made a clear commitment to hanging on to all the young folks in that immediate area. That's been a huge issue. So Columbus kind of has to step up, maybe be a little more competitive. So I want to ask you here. Now I'm going to share something with you. It's going to seem incredibly obvious and yet obscure at the same time. When I mention the word Columbus, let's pretend you're a sophomore in high school, just for the moment, in a history class, right? And the word Columbus comes up in the scope of the dialogue, right? What are you thinking of, right? You're thinking of Christopher Columbus, right? Of course, we all know that. It's a historical reference, very important to our country and our continent and so on and so forth, 1492 and all that. And we all kind of know what he kind of went through in Spain and getting the backing and all that kind of stuff and coming across the Atlantic, et cetera, right? It's a big deal back then, of course, a huge deal, life-changing. But very interesting, this word Columbus, right? Now, I'm going to ask you to just kind of let that go, kind of just sit passively in your mind. We all have that as a kind of a vague backdrop to that word. We're not thinking very much about that particular person or incident these days, of course. But it is embedded deeply in our subconscious. We do know what the man did and how it was extremely important. So what words would you associate, adjectives now, would you associate with Columbus? Just think about it for a second. Grab a piece of paper and pencil at home and write down what words, what adjectives, descriptors would come up. Well, I have a feeling it would be discovery would be the first word, right? Discovery. And maybe exploration, right? There's a couple great adjectives that are associated with the word Columbus. So let me think for a second. If you're the mayor of Columbus or civic officials there, economic development people and so on, and you're wondering, what should we be? What should we emphasize? What should we strive to accomplish that would be a little unusual but be on point, strategically sound, right? Well, we would want to be a place where people come to discover their career, their future. That means they are entrepreneurial, right? Young people who are entrepreneur, kind of want to think creatively, might want to have their own little company, right? Maybe they work for somebody else initially, but eventually they'd like to have their own firm. You come to Columbus to discover your career opportunities, to discover who you are. Think about this now. Very important. Explore your options, discover your future, discover what you can be in Columbus. There should be discovery days in Columbus. There should be all kinds of creative, open-ended activities, events, themes, messaging. That's the concept. Always be fresh, always be discovering in Columbus, Nebraska. It's obvious and it's powerful because Nebraska needs, especially women entrepreneurs, need a lot more women in the entrepreneurial ranks. We welcome you right here in Columbus, Nebraska. Now let's talk about Scribner. Think about the word Scribner, right? What's the first syllable? Scrib. What do you think about when you hear the word scrib? Scribble. Interesting, right? Interesting. What do you think about when you think about scribble? Well, you think about little kids and you think about colors and crayons. Oh my goodness, how interesting. It's a very family-oriented community, right? There's a lot of kids there. Interesting. Now, what if the color concept with the colors and the crayons and the scribbling, what if that were translated to downtown? Downtown Scribner. Looks like a lot of other downtowns, small towns around Nebraska, but what if every single building were colored in an intense crayon color? There'd be a green building downtown, a burgundy or red building downtown, a bright blue building downtown. By the way, in Venice, California, it is exactly like this 100 yards away from the beach, and it's very attractive. Bright gold, Tuscany gold building right next to it. So you're driving on 275, you're going west, coming out of Omaha, you're going all the way out to 275, you're going past Scribner, you say, let's go downtown and see what that looks like. It sounds really cool. Driving to downtown Scribner, and there it is. Beautiful colors, the barber shop, the hardware store, all the buildings that are downtown, the courthouse, all different beautiful colors. Scribner, once a year, there's a colorful Scribner thing downtown, and kids are scribbling everywhere. Everybody gets colors and crayons, and they put them up on the windows. Merchandising everywhere. Come bring your kids' scribbling and colors to our building, to our office, to our retail store. Come on downtown and see how it looks. An explosion of color and creativity in Scribner, Nebraska. Can you imagine how that would enliven the county and the culture of Scribner, Nebraska? How people would want to live downtown, work upstairs, work downstairs, etc. So there you see it. Two brands that have emotional and experiential branding implications. All kinds of cool things could be done in either one of those brands, kind of under the ceiling or the roof of those two cool ideas right there in Columbus for discovery, Scribner for colorful creativity. Great branding going on right here in Nebraska. Great opportunity for both those cities right now. Give me a call, obviously. My name is Lynn Hinderrocker, and I own a company here in town called Growth Dynamics. They are the promotional sponsors for this particular show. We'll talk a little bit about Growth Dynamics in just a moment. You'll see what the potential is for your community and your company going into 2021. I'm Lynn Hinderrocker. Thank you so much for watching us right here on WowBiz Nebraska. My partner Bruce Aaron will be back at our next show. We miss him deeply, but we will see him again soon. And oh, by the way, this show is brought to you by Growth Dynamics, a management consulting firm here in the eastern Nebraska area, although we have worked as far as Alabama and Chicago and done some other projects around the upper Midwest. But my name is Lynn Hinderrocker, and I do run Growth Dynamics. And I have to tell you something about this particular consulting firm. Now, keep this in mind. Only 35% of the time do clients say, yeah, I brought in an outside consultant. He or she was really great. I really liked it. Only 35% of the time. So I'm very sensitive to that. I want to make sure that we hit a home run every single time we work with you. And we've worked in 41 industries. I know that's hard to believe. And by the way, the engineering and construction industry would be an industry that we've spent extra time in. About half of those projects, by the way, were involved research. So we went out and talked to the end user, talked to clients, customers, face-to-face, one-on-one for at least 30 minutes or more, learned a ton of information, and then came back and developed a strategic plan, a vision, a positioning, leadership development. We work enterprise-wide, and here's the key factor I want to share with you about growthdynamics.org, by the way, is the website. We work in organizational development as well as business development. In other words, we work on marketing, advertising, and sales development, but we also work on culture, employee engagement, leadership development. So we go outside, we try to influence what's going on outside as well as what's going on inside the company. I've learned over time that you can do some fantastic things in marketing and advertising and get people really excited about the product and so on. But if you don't work on the heart and soul that's like inside of the company, you know, it all tends to kind of just dissipate and go back to where we were before we came along, right? We kind of go right back to our old habits if there isn't a third party like myself kind of in there on a regular basis, coaching people and moving them forward rather than letting them step back. So this is a very important thing. No matter if you're focused on getting your employees kind of focused on creating value and enthused about their jobs, that's one thing. Or same thing with your customers. As we go into the back end of the pandemic, 30 to 40% of your customers are looking around. So you've got to kind of build loyalty and enthusiasm, but being able to do them both, do them both, that's a big deal. That's a big deal. That makes all those important lessons, the principles, stick, and that's what really matters. I'm Lynn Hinderrocker. Contact me through Growth Dynamics, that's dynamix.org. Contact me there. My associates and I would be thrilled to just visit with you. No obligation, just kind of chat a little bit about your situation. Maybe do an informal audit, and we'll determine from there whether Growth Dynamics can help you. The odds are pretty good that we can. All right? So this show is brought to you by growthdynamics.org. I'm Lynn Hinderrocker, and I'm a host of the show. Bruce Arendt, my buddy and commentator, is not at this particular taping, but he will be here next time around, and we miss him, but it's an opportunity for me to speak from my heart to you, business owners, sales managers, entrepreneurs, all of you, corporate people, and think about a really, really big issue. This has to do with the state of Nebraska. It has to do with individual communities and of course, the companies within them. But when change becomes obvious, imminent, shall we say, and it's time to adjust, adapt, maybe go a little further than that, actually re-engineer, or as Tom Peters always said in his book, reimagine the future, right? We're at one of those moments right now. Now, I approach a lot of companies and business owners like yourself, I'm assuming, right? And it is an interesting thing, especially at the community level, but it's also with businesses. There's a tendency, I'm going to take this real slow, because I don't want to sound cliched or argumentative. I don't want to sound the least bit negative, but I've analyzed this pattern, this response pattern. And when we're fearful and uncertain, about what's going on and what the future is going to be and how are things going to change and how are we going to be and how are we going to restore cash flow, blah, 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 all these different things that are going through our minds and our hearts. And somebody comes from outside our realm, just out of context, just boom, phone call or an email or something, and all of a sudden we're talking to somebody that we don't really know, right? And they're there to recommend to us let's call it strategic transformation. It's a very fancy word. It can mean a lot of things. But basically what we're suggesting is either A, the game that you're playing in your business, to change that game, that's a big deal, or stay in that game, but change the way you operate, change the way you go about, generating profits and serving people and all that. So changing the game is a big topic. And what we see is that there is tremendous inertia, tremendous fear. Sounds good, makes some sense. You guys look like you know what you're doing. You've got some wonderful testimonials here. Your website looks good. I just don't know for sure. Besides, I keep thinking about back in the, 1997 when we did this, and then back in 2005, and that went really well, and I'm wondering if we can do that again or pick up on that. You know what I mean? See? And so that kind of thinking, I'll call it a fixed mindset. That's what Eric Ries calls it in his book, The Lean Startup. He calls it a fixed mindset. When we're under pressure, we step back. We step back. And we over-rely on our memories rather than relying on our imagination. Now, the other thing that we don't do is we get very narrow, we get very insular, we get very guarded, very guarded, and it's like, we don't know you, and we have this, and this is our tribe, and we kind of work together, and people pay their dues, and they show up, and so I think we should kind of like, work here, and that you're not in this, so, we're going to stay with these people right here, all right? Now, again, there's a lot of good things about that, and buy local, and all those kinds of things, but the fact of the matter is, the solution to your problem, whatever it is, and I'm going to choose one in a minute, the solution to your problem may have already been addressed by another civic administrator in North Carolina or South California or whatever, right? The problem you're dealing with is common in these cities all around the country that have 25 to 100,000 people. They're kind of stuck, the manufacturer left town, there's a high unemployment rate. We don't really know what to do. We're just going to kind of hang tight, And so other communities have figured this out. I'm going to give you an example right now. There's going to be a new administration, obviously. There's going to be a new emphasis as we get through this pandemic on climate control, climate change, environmentalism, and going green, et cetera. It's going to be a much bigger topic here. It's not going to go away. Right? And there are many, many communities in the state of Nebraska that are, they're okay with that, engineers and so on. They'll say occasionally we get a job and we'll go down and do a lead thing on a building and so on. But there's no overwhelming sense that this is what our world is about and this is what we owe our children and grandchildren. And we've got to do something now. There isn't any of that obvious at many communities in our state. All right, so. And they say, well, it's not clear what'll happen. We don't really know, and it costs money, and I don't know. We'll just wait and see and do what we have to do now and then. See, so if we take a step, I'm going to step away from the news desk right now. I'm going to step back here, right? I'm out of context. All right? All of a sudden, everything changes, right? And I'm looking at the world from a different perspective. Now, in Grand Rapids, Michigan, it's an interesting city, right? Grand Rapids, Michigan, they address this. Do you know that they are the most energy efficient city on a per capita basis, per individual, of any city in the United States of America? And they grappled with it and they figured it out and so on and so forth, right? They have a ton of lessons that they could share with Grand Island or Wayne or Broken Bow or anywhere. The answers are there. But you have to be able to look at something from outside your world, whether it's in a book or a magazine or a journal or a website or whatever, and start to connect the dots and say, if we did this and this and this, and then we kind of made it like this, and we watched this, we could do the same thing. We could create a whole bunch of clean energy jobs right here in Hastings or Holdridge, right? Yeah, that's how it goes. But you have to be willing to look outside your context, outside the backdrop against which you live, the over-focused environment that you kind of just go through every single day, the habit, the habitual thinking pattern. This is what, by the way, my firm brings to the party, and other companies do the same thing. That's where creative capital comes in, right? New information, new insights, new ideas, connecting the dots in various ways. All of a sudden, bam, we're the best city in Nebraska insofar as, carbon efficiency. I'm just using that as an example, by the way. Don't take it too far, but I'm just saying that's one example. We just have to step outside of the world we occupy every day because the answers are there. And all you really need to do is connect with people who spend time and energy uncovering those kinds the questions and the answers, and give them some degree of latitude, invest in a relationship, and say, yeah, come on in. We're going to trust you to lead us in this direction, share knowledge, do training, Zoom classes, whatever it takes, and we're going to figure this thing out. We're going to do the right thing, and then as a result of that, we're going to attract, here's the big whammo, right? We're going to attract the young people who now are saying, why would I ever want to live in Holdridge? Who cares about Hastings? Why would I want to go to Gehring? I don't know why I'd want to go there, right? There's an answer to those questions. There's an appropriate, creative, and effective response to that attitude. But in order to move in that direction, which we have to do, we have to do it, somebody has to trust an outsider. Somebody who brings fresh knowledge and insight and experience and so on. Now, there's a couple of books I want to draw to your attention that speak about this, and in particular, one here, it's called The Wide Lens. If you can catch that on camera, that'd be good. This is a book that is very exciting. Wide Lens talks about ecosystems, right? Ecosystems are essentially groups of people that work together. They're independent business owners, but they share certain values. They share a commitment to helping each other succeed. They want to collaborate, maybe form strategic alliances, and so on. It's all part of the ecosystem mentality. Another mentality, another great book is this book called Changing the Game. Again, these have been around for several years, but they are transformative. And again, I just have to emphasize to you, if you think that you can get through this next 6 months, go into summer of 2021 without, quote, thinking differently and thinking about how to transform not only your culture, your distribution system, your product line, your messaging, your talent approach, you're wrong. You're missing the boat, right? You're going to be behind the curve big time, and things are going to change, right? And among them, there'll be many more partnerships, many more collaborative relationships, online and offline, by the way, and it's going to be very exciting, but there'll be some clear winners and losers, and simply saying, you know, we're just going to stick with what we're doing, and we'll see what happens, and then we'll respond then back in June, and we'll just go like that, see? So I've got a little ad here that was written I took out of the New York Times. It's called Tomorrow. I'm going to read this for you briefly, and that'll be kind of our sign-off today on WowBiz Nebraska. It's an exciting ad. It's written by Hewlett-Packard HP, all right, a technology firm, obviously. But this is a very exciting piece, so I'm going to read it to you. And it looks like this. It's a full-page ad in the New York Times. I'm going to briefly read this to you because it applies to every small business in the state of Nebraska and beyond. The first line is, tomorrow belongs to the fast. Winners and losers will be decided by how quickly they can move from what they are now to what they need to become. Just think about that. Where you are now, what you need to become. In every business, IT strategy is now business strategy. It's a great thing to know, right? Those technology guys are really in the heart of the business strategy process, accelerating change, accelerating growth, accelerating security. And today, to help you move faster, we've created a new company. Think about all the companies that need to create new divisions. One totally focused on what's next for your business, right? A true partnership, accelerating innovation, accelerating transformation, accelerating value. We are here to help everyone go further and go faster. That's kind of the mantra for WowBiz Nebraska. My name is Lynn Hinderrocker, and that should be your mantra. Speak to our promotional sponsors, growthdynamics.org. If you're interested in really seriously taking this thing take the bull by the horn, so to speak, embrace the planning process, create a new vision, reinvent your company, move forward with partners that are experienced and understand how to navigate the ship in this dangerous and unpredictable day and age. Thanks again for watching. I'm Lynn Hinderrocker. And once again, we'll see you next time with Bruce Arrett, by the way, on WowBiz Nebraska. Thanks again.